Welcome. Trauma is my jam, and by that I mean I help you understand what your body is doing. Let's make sense of it together.
Let's talk dopamine. A lot of people misunderstand dopamine. People often think dopamine is the happiness chemical. And listen, fair enough, because I describe it that way too. The feel good chemical that releases in your brain. But it's actually a lot more complicated than that. And we need to understand it when we're talking about addiction. Dopamine is heavily connected to motivation, anticipation, seeking, and reward learning. Basically, dopamine helps Dopamine helps drive us towards things the brain believes will help us survive or feel better. And that's important because your brain is constantly learning what changes my state, what reduces discomfort, and what helps me feel different. So let's say you're stressed or emotionally overwhelmed or exhausted. And then you're scrolling on your phone, you're eating sugar, you drink, you shop, you use substances, you binge Netflix. And for a moment, you feel different, maybe even calmer, maybe numb, distracted, maybe even relieved. And your brain notices that. And dopamine helps reinforce that loop. Not because your brain is trying to ruin your life, but because your nervous system is trying to regulate. And this is where we really need to understand the difference between pleasure and relief, because they're not the same things. Sometimes people aren't actually chasing happiness. They're trying to stop discomfort. They could be trying to quiet the mind, escape that feeling of overwhelm, shutting off stress, numbing emotional pain, or stopping to feel something entirely, even if it's only temporarily. And when someone has lived through trauma or chronic stress, their nervous system can spend a lot of time in survival mode. And so the brain becomes highly focused on relief. Anything that changes that state quickly then becomes powerful, which is why behaviors can become so repetitive so quickly, because the brain learns this works, even if it's only temporarily, and regardless of what the consequences may be later on. So instead of looking at ourselves or other people and saying, why do they keep doing this? Why can't they just stop? We need to start asking different questions. Questions like, what is the nervous system trying to achieve here? What is this person seeking through their behavior? Because when we can understand the function, we finally have something to work from. And that's the difference. Let's say that you're scrolling social media and you see a group of your friends are out somewhere together and you weren't invited. And maybe consciously you tell yourself, it's fine, it's not a big deal. But internally, something shifts. And your nervous system feels, left out, maybe disconnected, rejected. And almost instantly, you feel the urge to change the behavior. And suddenly, you want that junk food. You want to drink. You want to do some shopping. You start seeking attention. Maybe you get back into scrolling more or seeking a distraction. And again, not consciously because you decided, I want this, but because your nervous system is trying to dysregulate the discomfort. And this is where I want to give you a simple tool. This I'm calling the Q, name, delay, and question. Now, to stop the behavior perfectly, this is not Q, name, delay, and question. The goal of this is not to stop the behavior perfectly. It is to interrupt autopilot long enough to create some awareness. Because listen, awareness is the key to creating choice. So step one is the cue. You're going to notice the cue. So in this situation, the cue wasn't actually the urge. The cue was seeing the post and feeling disconnected. And that was the moment that the nervous system got activated. And most people miss that part completely. They only name the behavior afterwards. Step 2 is name. Name the state. So instead of automatically reaching for something, pause and name what's happening. So some examples for this. Wow, I'm kind of feeling left out right now. Or I'm trying to escape this feeling of being rejected. This slows the loop down because now you're consciously aware of the state you're in instead of unconsciously reacting from it. Step 3 is delay. Delay the automatic reach. Not forever. Even if it's 30 seconds or 1 minute or 5 minutes. Because the goal here isn't perfection. It's interrupting autopilot. So instead of instantly reaching for that dopamine hit, that ice cream, that wine, that other substance you may use, those behaviors, gambling, whatever it is. So instead of instantly grabbing for that dopamine hit, you create a pause long enough for your thinking brain to come back online. And then step 4, question. You're then going to ask yourself, what does my nervous system actually need right now? Not what will make me stop feeling this instantly. What does my system need? And most times what your system is looking for is some comfort, connection, co-regulation, movement, rest, or support. Something deeper that hits quick. So, you may still decide, I want that comfort now, and that's okay. We're not here to judge. But at least you're making a conscious choice and not acting automatically from a triggered nervous system state. And that's what changes everything when we're working on recovery. The opposite of autopilot is not perfection. It's awareness. What is the most important thing I hope that you take from this video, if you don't take anything else, it's that the goal here isn't to shame yourself for having coping strategies. Everybody's nervous system learns ways to survive, ways to regulate, and ways to get through difficult states. The problem is that sometimes the strategies our brains learn for short-term relief don't actually support us in the long term. And when we only look at the behavior on the surface, we miss what the nervous system was trying to do underneath it. So maybe the question isn't, why do I keep doing this? Maybe the question should become, what is my nervous system trying to help me escape, avoid, numb, or regulate? Because once we understand the function, you finally have somewhere to work from. Not through shame, not through punishment, but through awareness and compassion. And this is why understanding dopamine matters, because dopamine doesn't just reinforce pleasure. It reinforces relief. The brain remembers, that changed my state, and if we don't understand that, we stay trapped judging ourselves for behavior that actually makes sense neurologically. So remember, you are not weak for having coping strategies. Your nervous system learned what helped you survive difficult states. Now the work becomes learning safer, healthier ways to support the system underneath the urge. Because healing isn't about becoming perfectly disciplined. It's about becoming conscious enough to recognize what the nervous system is asking for before autopilot takes over. All right, my friends, that is it for today. If you want to learn more about trauma-informed healing and how the nervous system actually works, you can explore programs through Insight Learning Institute.